Have you ever looked around and realized you're surrounded but still feel alone? You laugh, you hang out, you text back, but something feels fake. Something feels off. You keep people close, but your soul is still starving. Maybe, just maybe, it's not about how many people are around you. Maybe it's about how deep you've gone within yourself. This is not about hate. It's not about pushing people away. It's about rising without needing a hand to hold. Here's why you don't need friends. Most people fear being alone because they've been taught that solitude equals weakness. That without a circle of friends, you're somehow broken or incomplete. But what if that's the biggest lie you've ever been told? What if the real strength, the kind that can't be taken from you, comes from being able to stand alone undistracted, unshaken, and untouchable? Have you ever looked around and realized you're surrounded but still feel alone? You laugh, you hang out, you text back, but something feels fake. Something feels off. You keep people close, but your soul is still starving. Maybe, just maybe, it's not about how many people are around you. Maybe it's about how deep you've gone within yourself. This is not about hate. It's not about pushing people away. It's about rising without needing a hand to hold. Here's why you don't need friends. Most people fear being alone because they've been taught that solitude equals weakness. That without a circle of friends, you're somehow broken or incomplete. But what if that's the biggest lie you've ever been told? What if the real strength, the kind that can't be taken from you, comes from being able to stand alone undistracted, unshaken, and untouchable? Self-sufficiency isn't just a skill. It's a lifestyle. It means you don't look outward for happiness, stability, or identity. You build those things within yourself. When you stop depending on others to feel seen, heard, or valued, something powerful happens. You take full control of your life. You begin to realize that everything you thought you needed from someone else, you can actually give to yourself. The moment you become emotionally self-reliant is the moment the world loses its power to shake you. People can leave. Friends can switch up. Support can vanish. But you stay solid. Because you've built your foundation on something far more reliable than anyone else's presence, your own. Most people build their lives like a table balanced on others' approval, needing likes, texts, attention, invitations. But self-sufficiency is like building that same table on bedrock. Even if people pull away, your life to pull lapse. You're unshaken because your peace, your direction, and your strength don't come from the outside and they flow from the inside out. And this doesn't mean you can't have relationships. It means you don't need them to function. There's a difference. When you're self-sufficient, friendships become a choice, not a crutch. You don't chase people just to fill a void. You walk your path with clarity, and anyone who joins you is a bonus, not a necessity. This level of independence isn't cold, it's clean. It's free from emotional debt and fake smiles. It allows you to give to others from a place of overflow, not desperation. And most importantly, it allows you to protect your energy, your goals, and your peace. You don't need friends to feel whole. You need purpose. You need focus. You need a relationship with yourself that's deeper than any conversation and stronger than any bond. Because once you know how to be enough for yourself, you become unstoppable. Most people are terrified of being alone, not because solitude is painful, but because they've confused it with rejection. We've been conditioned to believe that if you're not constantly surrounded by people, there must be something wrong with you. But the truth is, loneliness isn't the real enemy. Dependency is. There's a dangerous illusion in today's world that your value is determined by how connected you are, how many friends you have, how many group chats you're in, how many people check on you. But beneath all that noise, there's a question most are too scared to ask: what happens if no one shows up? If that question terrifies you, it's a sign you've built your identity on the presence of others. And that's a fragile way to live, because people change, circumstances shift, life moves on. But when your self-worth is dependent on others sticking around, you're always one exit away from emotional collapse. Being alone doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're free to face yourself without distraction. It's in those quiet moments when no one's texting, calling, or validating you that your real power begins to grow. That's when you realize how much of your strength has been waiting underneath all that noise. The world teaches you to fear being alone because it's the only space where truth echoes loudly. And in that silence, you come face to face with everything you've been avoiding, your insecurities, your fears, your inner dialogue. But that's exactly where transformation begins. Not in the crowd, not in the comfort of company, but in the raw, unfiltered stillness of solitude. Dependency isn't connection, it's addiction to approval. And once you break that addiction, you stop shrinking to fit in. You stop compromising your standards just to keep someone around. You stop silencing your truth to avoid being left behind. True confidence is built when you can be completely alone and still feel complete. When you can walk into a room full of people knowing you don't need a single one of them to validate your existence. That's not isolation. That's freedom. So no, loneliness isn't your enemy. It's your training ground. And once you've learned to stand alone without craving someone else's presence, you'll stop chasing attachment and start attracting respect. Most friendships aren't built on truth, they're built on convenience, on proximity, on temporary alignment. And when that alignment shifts, when life pulls you in different directions, many of those so-called friendships start to fade or fall apart. That's when you realize how conditional most connections really are. People will be around when you're fun, useful, or beneficial. When you're up, when you're laughing, when you're giving. But let the laughter stop. Let the giving slow down. Let the season change. You'll be surprised how quickly friends disappear when your presence no longer serves their comfort or advantage. That's not friendship. That's a transaction. We live in a world where loyalty is rare and masks are common. Where people show you what they want you to see, not who they really are. And if you're not careful, you'll call someone a friend just because they smile in your face. But time reveals everything. The real ones stay when it's inconvenient, when it's messy, when there's nothing in it for them. The rest, they vanish like smoke. And the harsh truth is this: many of the people you call friends wouldn't defend you in a room full of silence, let alone speak for you in a room full of critics. They'll laugh with you, but won't cry with you. They'll show up for the party, but not the pain. Because their connection to you is based on what you bring, not who you are. Friendships based on conditions are like paper in the rain. They look strong until life gets wet. Then you find out who really values you and who was just there for the ride. And while that realization can sting, it's one of the most freeing truths you'll ever accept. Because once you stop expecting loyalty from convenience, you start building a deeper relationship with yourself. You no longer chase people who were never meant to stay. You stop breaking yourself to keep temporary bonds alive. You begin to honor your energy, protect your peace, and walk alone if it means walking in truth. So no, you don't need a crowd to feel loved, especially not one that's only loyal when it's easy. You need realness. And sometimes, realness looks like walking alone, not because you're hard to be around, but because you've outgrown conditional connections. Growth doesn't happen in the noise. It doesn't happen when you're constantly surrounded by opinions, distractions, and the pressure to fit in. Real transformation happens in the quiet, when it's just you, your thoughts, your struggles, and your truth. That's why solitude isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace. Because the most powerful version of you is forged in isolation. When you're alone, you can finally hear yourself. Not the filtered version you present to others, but the raw, unedited voice inside, the one that knows what you want, what you fear, and what you're capable of. In the silence, there's no one to impress, no roles to play. There's just you. And that's where the real work begins. Being around people all the time can blur your identity. You start adapting to the group, compromising your voice, conforming to the expectations of others. But when you step away from all of that, when you sit with your own presence, you start to reconnect with your core. You begin to unlearn the lies you picked up trying to belong. You start peeling back the layers of who you had to be, and finally meet who you really are. Solitude gives you space to reflect, recalibrate, and rebuild. It's where you identify what's holding you back. It's where you confront the pain you've been running from. And it's where you begin to plant new roots stronger, deeper, and more aligned with your purpose. There's a reason some of the most successful and self-aware people in history spent seasons in isolation. Not because they were avoiding the world, but because they were preparing to impact it. You can't elevate if you're always surrounded by comfort. Growth demands discomfort, and nothing is more uncomfortable than facing yourself with no escape. But here's the reward. Once you've grown in solitude, no crowd can shake you. You stop seeking approval because you've already approved of yourself. You stop chasing validation because you know your value. You stop fearing silence because that's where you found your strength. Growth requires solitude, not because you're meant to be alone forever, but because you're meant to return stronger, clearer, unshakable. And when that version of you emerges from the quiet, you'll understand why the solitude was necessary and why you never needed the noise to begin with. You are your own best friend because no one else will ever understand your journey the way you do. The experiences you've been through, the battles you fought, the dreams you carry deep inside, they belong to you alone. Others may try to relate or empathize, but only you hold the full story, the raw emotions, and the hidden scars. This is why relying on yourself is not just important, it's essential. When you treat yourself as your closest companion, you stop searching for validation outside. You learn to listen to your own voice above the noise of opinions, judgments, and expectations. You become your own cheerleader in times of doubt, your own source of comfort in moments of pain, and your own guide when the path seems unclear. No one else can do that for you with the same depth or consistency. Friendships, no matter how genuine, come with limitations. People get busy, priorities shift, and sometimes the support you expect doesn't arrive when you need it most. But your relationship with yourself is constant. It's the one bond that lasts through every season of life, through every success and failure. When you strengthen that bond, you build a foundation that nothing and no one can shake. Being your own best friend means embracing your flaws without judgment. It means forgiving yourself for mistakes and celebrating your victories, no matter how small. It means nurturing your mental and emotional well-being as tenderly as you would care for a loved one. This kind of self-love isn't selfish, it's survival. It's the fuel that powers every other connection you have. When you rely on yourself first, you attract healthier relationships because you're no longer needy or desperate for approval. When you rely on yourself first, you attract healthier relationships because you're no longer needy or desperate for approval. You're whole on your own, and that wholeness shines through. People are drawn to your confidence, your calm, and your self-respect. And if someone can't meet you where you are, you have the strength to walk away without fear or regret. In the end, the most loyal, understanding, and supportive friend you will ever have lives within you. The deeper you get to know yourself, the more you realize that self-reliance isn't loneliness, it's empowerment. It's freedom from dependence and the key to living a life that's truly your own. You don't need friends to feel whole, because the foundation of your worth isn't built on external validation, it's built on your own purpose and focus. When you center your energy on a meaningful goal, a vision that's bigger than temporary connections or fleeting approval, you create a sense of completeness that no amount of social interaction can match. Many people mistake friendship for fulfillment. They believe that having a wide circle of acquaintances or constant social engagement will fill the gaps inside them. But the truth is, these connections often mask a deeper emptiness. No relationship, no matter how close, can substitute for the sense of direction that comes from knowing who you are and what you're striving for. Purpose acts like an internal compass. It guides you through challenges, keeps you motivated when things get tough, and anchors you when life feels uncertain. When you have that kind of focus, you become immune to the ups and downs of social approval because your value is no longer tied to how many people like or support you. You're driven by something far more powerful, your own commitment to yourself. This kind of self-driven purpose fuels resilience. It pushes you to keep going, even when friends fade away, when support wanes, or when you feel isolated. Because you know that your journey isn't about pleasing others, it's about fulfilling your own potential. And that kind of inner fire can't be extinguished by anyone else's absence. When you realize you are enough without needing constant companionship, you stop settling for superficial relationships or fake connections just to avoid loneliness. You stop diluting your energy to fit in or be accepted. Instead, you start investing in your own growth, honing your skills, and building a life that commands respect not because of who surrounds you,